All right, how's it going, Chris? How you feeling today?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Good so far, and I think this is going to be our first show that we're not doing live. This is going to be Gaming Over 30 Recorded Edition, mainly because we're not going to be available, unfortunately, around that time. So we are going to do pretty much put out a show anytime that we can,
Yeah.
on the time that we said we're going to do. So whether it's recorded, whether it's live, we're trying to put a show out every Friday. So this will be the first recorded one that should be popping up around 7 p.m. So hopefully it nothing goes wrong and it doesn't actually post. But for now, everybody, welcome to Gaming Over 30, and let's start with the show. Chris, I have a question for you.
Shoot it.
Do you know about the PlayStation, the big one of the big three, being sued for a ton of money?
Yeah, it's like $5 billion or some ridiculous amount like that.
You're actually pretty short. It's 6 million or
Oh,
6 billion,
jeez.
or yeah, I
Jesus.
think it's
An
billion.
extra
Yeah,
whole billion. That's a lot of
billion
money,
with
dude.
a it's a billion with a B, and I think it's weird because it come out of left field a little bit because I'm reading it, I'm seeing people covering it and all that, and I thought we could use that as a topic since this is going to be recorded, of kind of
Yeah.
really just talking about it and then discussing it, whether or not, how do we actually feel about something like this, and kind of some other things I feel like kind of branch from this, because I think the overall conversation is actually more important than the conversation with Sony right now. And I kind of wanted to hit on that kind of stuff. So, first question I kind of wanted to, kind of go with you about this is, how do you feel about digital game sales today? Let's kind of get like that baseline out the way.
As for me, I know you and I somewhat have different views on this, but I'm totally okay with digital sales and stuff like that. Um, I just don't spend a lot of time going to stores buying games anymore. And since I'm usually a late bloomer when it comes to games, I'm not like buying them right then, right when they come out most of the time, unless I really, really want the game. It's usually like, oh, I'll just get it on sale because since I have my PC to play games and I play a lot more games on my PC, it's like Steam always has really good sales. I could just add a game I want in my wish list. It'll notify me when it goes on sale. And then depending how well the sale is, I could choose or not if I want to actually buy it and stuff like that. And then when it comes to like that game I want to play it on time when it comes out, I'll just buy it digitally. I mean, I don't have a lot of space to be having discs all over my area that I live in and stuff like that. So if I could put it digital, I'm fine with it.
And I think that makes sense. When you're not really rushing to buy games, then you kind of have a little bit more flexibility, and that's kind of like the whole PC gaming like market there, right? Like,
Yeah,
a lot of times you can get games a little bit cheaper if you wait a little bit. Patience comes rewards, and I think that's a really good way to kind of look at it. I think for me, um, we're different in the way of I prefer a disc because the disc is ownership itself. It's a license to own the physical copy, but mainly it's because I know as long as that disc isn't broken in half and scratch, I can play it on that console. And as long as I have a console to play it on, of course. But I think half of the reason why is because I buy a lot of like the little extra things that come with it, and I know now, like for like probably like the last decade, a lot of the games that I played has come with like a more expensive digital version that comes with like digital goodies and stuff. And it's like no matter which one you buy, you're gonna get the same type of goodies and stuff.
right.
And I normally take that to 11 by buying the bigger one. Um,
Yeah, I'm not the biggest fan of like digital goodies and stuff like that. If I'm gonna buy something
mhm.
that's gonna cost more money, I better have something more physical in that aspect. So if it comes to
Yeah,
like collector's edition, I want that thing I can hold. Like, look at this.
yeah, because I mean, like $80 to $90 for like an extra strap, or just like having some stuff that kind of adds at the very beginning of the game a little bit. it seems kind of, terrible in that aspect. Like, yeah,
Yeah,
like I realized someone had to kind of make that stuff, so I'm not too ignorant of the process of like, oh, if I were to get this model done, I would have to pay some money. But I guess in the aspects of games and the scale of it, of how much, I know that the company's probably getting from it, I feel like it's a lot when you're already pushing like games at $60, $70, and then you're trying to find some way to get to $100.
yeah.
Like what's the
Um,
safe way we can get to $100 without giving
since
them like something
since
I have to manufacture?
yeah, since you're a big collector and stuff like that with those items, how do you feel about the editions that they'll give you all like the physical goodies, but they'll only give you a digital copy for the game?
I think it's cheating. I
Okay.
like the plainly, I think it's just cheating because it's like you did pay for the physical copy. I don't care how much the disc was, or how much the statue was, or how much the backpack was. It's no excuse to not get the physical copy. Like I mean,
Yeah.
they will give you the steel case for a game you don't have a physical copy for, and
Yeah, I've
think
never
that
understood that.
that warrants it. And it always seems to be games that are like pushing $250, $300.
Yeah.
Like it's always game that, like, if you get any game with like the collectible figure that seems to be like sub $200, or maybe probably like 150, I think is the lowest, you'll still get the disc. And it's because they don't really have anything else to really give you, outside of that. But anytime they try to like really hype it, or like trying to really kind of put it up in those higher price range, then
Hmm.
they're like, I mean, at this point, do they really need the disc? I was like, yeah, no, I need the disc. Like,
Yeah.
I did pay for it. Like, I don't. If I get a box in my hand, I expect a disc to be in
Cool.
it.
At least
And
we're
I
on the
think that
same
kind of
page there.
yeah, and I think that this circles back to kind of like my baseline is I do prefer physical copies for a plethora of reasons. If I don't have internet, I can still play the game. If the server for PlayStation goes down, I can still play the game.
Yeah.
But I like the aspect of digital games for games that I'm not too strong to play right now. And I like the fact that digital games does bring some benefits of, sometimes they might distribute them out easier and stuff. So, kind of like with those baselines out the way, I kind of want to go over the claims that they have here, and we'll kind of bring it up for everybody just kind of see. And for people who are just listening, we're going to go through it anyway, just so that we can kind of have our baselines go against the claims that are being said. I think that's kind of really, really important for that.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah. Let me know if you can kind of see it.
I can see it. I
Okay.
can see
So,
clearly now.
boy.
Don't copyright us.
Yeah. Was I not already, man? We're not even like what 6 minutes into the video, maybe. Um. So this is the official website for the claims for that they're doing in the UK, and just to kind of base, this is something happening in the UK, and in the US, I'm not sure how well this will fly, but in the UK, I know they have a lot more stricter rules and policies, and I think this is kind of why they're pushing against for something like this. So I just kind of want to highlight the five kind of reasons for the claim. And the first one, I think is the big one. Sony has a near monopoly on the sale of digital games and add-on content through its control of the PlayStation Store. What do you think about that first claim?
I mean, don't the other like consoles have the same issue? Because like Switch, you have to go through the Nintendo eStore, and Microsoft, you have to go through the Microsoft Store, right? Like you can't get a third party app added onto your device and then buy games that way.
So essentially, you're correct like that, and I think that's like when you first read it, I think that's gonna be like your first kind of guess at it, right? Is the fact that, oh, but of course Sony has a monopoly on the Sony store,
Yeah,
right?
it's their
It's like,
product.
yeah, they have it. Same thing as Xbox would, same thing as Nintendo would. I think what they're trying to hit on this first point is that while they're the platform that just allows for games to be sold and stuff, some games on there isn't a way to buy a lot of those games somewhere else from the that could be worked on the PlayStation. So I think the way that they want to say it is like, yeah, it's fine that Sony has its own store and it sets its own prices and it has its own licensing. I think what they're trying to hit at is because there isn't any other way to buy a PlayStation game digitally from like a different type of market that might do something like this. Like, I can't buy a PlayStation game through Epic. Then
Okay,
it kind of hurts being able to do anything, and because of that, they're gonna up those prices. And I've heard some where like some of the digital games are like £70, right?
right.
That's a lot more than it would be in America for the same game. We're talking about same game, physical or digital. They up it up. They don't really price it to where they're the same. And so you're paying for a digital game a lot more expensive than a physical one. And they say, and I've heard that that's the case. I heard that's probably more the case for PlayStation games that are probably like the first party PlayStation games,
Your
or
God
like
of
games that
Wars for
place
Forbidden West,
yeah,
stuff like
games
that.
that they're probably pushing and stuff like that, because even now like they're trying to push $70 games,
Yeah,
in store. Like, even though like a lot, like if you go to Walmart, you can get everything for $60. And for some reason, I noticed Walmart has some games physically cheaper by $10.
yeah.
That
Even
I
like
always thought that was
their
kind of
new
weird.
Switch games come out, they're like $50, not 60, and stuff like that when they first come out.
Yeah,
I think
but
they're
like
trying to
if
get
you
people
would,
to come in store.
yeah, but when you do check online, that they do try to push that $69 price range. And I
Nice.
think that is kind of weird. But just talking about the digital stuff, I think it's just the fact that there isn't a way for you to buy a PlayStation digital game somewhere else and use it on the PlayStation console.
Hmm.
And I think that's the problem that they're talking about. It's like, since they're not allowing that, kind of like you can't buy an Apple app from a different store and then put it on your Apple phone. They're saying this is kind of unfair because they're trying to not only put different pricing, put different licenses, they choke people to go into their funnel, and so they can up the prices to kind of get a bigger return on it. And I think that's what this first one is trying to hit. Is it's There's just no way to buy a different copy of it. Kind of like, at least for like Xbox, you could buy like the PC version sometimes, and it could work for your Xbox version. But it's like really noted that if you buy the PC version, it would also work with Xbox. So it's not really kind of like
Yeah,
getting
gotcha.
out of the same thing. And this is kind of why, like, when I think about this, I think like Nintendo's probably worse in this category, because a lot of the games that Nintendo puts out are only for Nintendo, while a lot of the games that do come out for PlayStation, you can buy for like Steam, you could buy for Epic, you could buy for
Right.
Xbox. Like, they even like their first party games like God of War, Horizon, they're starting to come out now as just time
On PC.
releases and
Yeah.
making it to the PC. So it's like, yeah, maybe probably at the very beginning is really constricted. But I think later on, it's just kind of like, yeah, they kind of phase out of importance and stuff like that. And there's a way to buy them.
I haven't looked into the weeds of this, but I'm guessing Nintendo doesn't overprice their games. They keep it consistent with the physical copies on their stores. That's what I'm
I
assuming,
think
and that's why they're maybe going against PlayStation for this reason.
I think my thing about Nintendo, and maybe I'm not sure if you see this, when does Nintendo really price down their stuff?
They don't because they know people will buy it because it's Nintendo.
So, but it's also, there's only one place to buy it. And I think that's kind of like the bigger thing. Like, they have no need to really price down like Mario Party, or even like games like, Super Smash Brothers now. Like, it's
Yeah,
still, I think, at its like highest price point.
yeah,
I
like
still
$60 or
think
something.
Mario Odyssey is still at its price point. Like, they haven't really gone down, but you do expect like a lot of other games to kind of go down over time. So it's weird that their digital copies don't actually, and you'll notice this. You could buy
Oh
the
yeah,
physical copy sometimes way cheaper than the digital one. The digital one would be like, no, it's still $50. It's still $60. You're still buying the game. It didn't change. And I think that is a different type of conversation to have with that. That's not really what they're hitting here, but I think it's just that's something that I noticed is why, like, sometimes the argument or the reason that people use for a lot of this stuff kind of backfires, personally.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go over the second point. Sony uses this dominance to enforce strict terms and conditions on game developers and publishers. So, and I think that's kind of just more of a, hey, Ubisoft, you want to export to our game? Okay, well, you need to do this. This is the fee. If you sell this many, we'll got to do this. Please sign the dotted line here for everything else.
Right.
Blah blah blah. It's to me a standard contract. I
Yeah, that's
think I
something been
just
going
need to
on
see how much they
forever.
actually charge. Yeah, like I think this is. I think it maybe they might be going up more, but nobody really knows that.
I don't think so because I think from like reports and stuff I've seen like beforehand and stuff like when Epic first released like their online store and stuff like that, they were
Hmm.
fighting. They're fighting against Valve with Steam, and they're taking less of a cut for their games stuff like that compared to Valve because they're trying to be up and coming, and then their quote is trying to be more developer friendly and stuff like that. And so when those reports
Hmm.
came out, everyone started talking about Nintendo, Microsoft, and PlayStation's, and they're all around the same lines as even like the Google and Apple, where it's about 30% is usually like their cut that they get. And I've seen the same thing for the
For
PlayStation
some
Store
of them,
being,
yeah,
yeah, but like your standard for most of them is 30%, like on the dot for the most part. And it's Steam is, I
yeah.
mean, sorry, Epic is the one that's, I think they do like 20 or 18% or something like that.
They try to be lower. I know it's. I think it's worse for mobile platforms because a lot of the games they don't really sell at. They're not selling for like 60 or not even $10. They're free to
Right.
play stuff, so it's really on the cap of things bought, and sometimes I think it's 60/40. And I think that's kind of where like it hits a lot, and I think that's what Epic was really trying to fight around the time with the whole Apple thing, that they
Yeah.
do take a lot unless you have a very particular partnership with the company, and that you go price down like your partnership. And I think that's what people probably do for Sony as well. But baseline, if you were to even be like an indie developer, you're kind of really under the same kind of pressure of like you are going to lose this amount of money, like, for
Yeah.
sure. But you need to do that if you want to be on it. And then that's kind of like, yeah, if you want to again put something for PlayStation for that Sony game, it has to only be on their market. If not, you got to do the whole physical thing, which you either have to pay to have a digital license or you got to pay to have a physical license. Either way,
Yeah.
Sony's getting your money. It's just the problem, like, well, you cannot have the physical one and not have the digital one to go with it. So you're gonna pay both prices, whatever they kind of say, and that's kind of where the monopoly again comes from.
Yeah. I wonder about because I'm sure it hasn't come out or anything like that, but I'd be really interested to see what exactly terms and conditions are a lot different compared to Microsoft, Valve, and Nintendo's policies as a reason to put it on this to be like, hey, this is one of our top reasons why we're part of this lawsuit is because these term conditions are too strict or they enclose on the game developer. It's like, well, how far different are they from the other companies out there?
Yeah. And I haven't really seen too much of what other people have said about this as far as game companies go.
Yeah.
But I bet you if I look at Twitter, I'll probably find a few. It's hard for me to go on Twitter looking at people's comments. I will
Yeah,
one day.
Twitter's an interesting place. You find some good, you find a lot of bad.
Pretty much. All right, what's this third point? Probably highlight this so they see it better. These terms allow Sony to set price of digital games and in-game content and charge a 30% commission on every purchase of digital game and in-game content from the PlayStation Store. Can we kind of really talked about that? They charge basically 30% for everything.
Yeah.
This so okay, just skip to the next one. This results in excessive and unfair prices to consumers for the digital games and in-game content. Basically, the consumer pays the ultimate price. These prices are out of all proportions to the cost of Sony providing these services to its customers. And I kind of just read the rest because we pretty much hit on a lot of this.
Yeah.
Um,
They kind of all intertwine to each other.
yeah, it's just kind of like, hey, you're doing all this. And that's pretty much what it kind of goes down to. And I think that's really what I wanted to kind of hit on this one here was just kind of like those claims. What are they claiming? Because this is really where a lot of the things kind of hit. Um, but I do want to read this. This is probably what's going to be the more interesting thing, um, that I've seen a lot of people kind of pick at when it comes to kind of making this claim. Because what they're saying here, after kind of reading what they're saying here, let's see if this bottom part makes sense. The business model of gaming has changed dramatically over recent years. The move from games sold as physical discs to games sold digitally has seen the introduction of in-game content where players have must now also pay to progress, unlock more features, or customize their experiences with new characters or weapons. Games are now being designed to incentivize players to spend as much money as possible, including children. We believe that customers are paying too much for these digital products and that they deserve to be treated better by Sony and compensated. Our legal action is the first of this kind against Sony in the UK. So one of the things that they kind of picked out at was kind of this one here. Games are now designed to incentivize players to spend as much money as possible, including children. So I
Somebody
think
please
that's
think
trying
of the
to.
children.
What they're trying to do here is just kind of give a little bit more validity, or make this point more valid. I will say that. And I don't think they're doing a good job at this point because I think this says a really strong point. I don't think the things on top are really contributing to that strong point.
So this is pretty much against the idea of microtransactions for games because a lot of the games have switched to free to play versions or pay a bare minimum and buy a bunch of stuff online to add to it,
It's
right?
pretty much like, how do we get, people to keep buying stuff that seems fun? And yeah, like maybe they're trying to target kids, but quite honestly, I don't think the PlayStation Store is doing a good job of that. Like, if
No,
me who's kind of owned every single PlayStation to this point and bought stuff from the digital, I don't think PlayStation does a good job of putting stuff in front of you that's like, oh, here's a pretty shiny coin and
yeah,
stuff like that. Like, there's a different. I know what they're trying to do is saying that they're forcing publishers and game developers to do things in order to get the money to try and make up whatever kind of losses that it have, and somehow that's Sony's fault. But I feel like this here is a very different um excuse than what the claim is trying to do. The claim is just trying to say, hey, there's a monopoly, you're charging people, you're doing things bad, and now the consumers ultimately having to pay more money because of the rules that you put out for
yeah,
your store. And then they come out here with this, like, oh, well, the games themselves are being designed in a way that kind of gets like, well, that's more of like, you hit EA for that. Like,
yeah.
I'm gonna go mostly at the EA for that.
Especially because if you think of Sony games, they're when there comes to their first party stuff, they're known for single player, third perspective action game in a sense, stuff like that. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
they're really one of the ones that don't do very much multiplayer online games and stuff like that. Like I think that's one of the reasons why they bought Bungie is to try and expand on that aspect because they know making games is really hard and really expensive. It takes a lot of time, and so you make money off of these single player games, but you're gonna make a lot more profit off of these free to play games, these ongoing games that keep updating and stuff like that, like your Destinies and stuff like that, your Divisions and stuff like that. And Sony's not really known for making those games, so it's kind of weird to state a claim being, oh, well, they're creating these games to incentivize kids and stuff like that to purchase them. It's like, well, Sony's just allowing these other companies to put it onto their system in their store, and then they're telling them, hey, we want this percentage of it, and the store, the other people say okay, and then they charge it, and then for some reason they're trying to blame Sony on this, which is like a weird way to go about it.
Yeah. Because I it's weird to say that they're not. Well, no, I think I can say that safely. Like, they're not really connected. I think that these 2 points are not really connected. I don't think one is a cause and the other is an effect. I don't think that one of them is the root cause of this. I think, yeah, maybe it's. and this is why I said like this kind of leads into a bigger conversation because I think we could talk about, game companies are probably having a hard time surviving because they need to put out a product that keeps generating them money the same way that people like, YouTubers put out a video like that. It
Yeah.
needs to keep having watch time for them to for people to kind of get something out of it. And while like I love single player games more than like multiplayer games, single player games are one time things. And when you buy it that one time, unless there's a lot more content being added to it, you're not really going to be milking that too much. Versus like if they make any type of free to play game, like as long as the game is good and it gets people to keep playing it, then they can kind of feed little things here and there and to kind of get the revenue from that to kind of
Right.
justify a lot of the stuff. Like is um like I kind of like I understand kind of like where game companies are kind of heading to because this is a really big industry, but with everybody, more developers getting paid more or just having more developers in itself and everybody else kind of like, getting more people to manage products, but getting more people to make sure stuff is on time, getting more people to kind of do art for a lot of these games and everything. It all costs real money, and I think that the cost of that is rising faster than what we're all
Hmm.
willing to say we're okay to pay more for a
Oh
game to
yeah,
make sure all this kind of works in that.
because this is one of the first times when these new consoles came out where the price of an initial game increased $10. Because it's been $60 since what, the 360, maybe Xbox days.
Yeah, it's been $60 for like more than a decade now.
Yeah.
And that we all complained about it then when it was like, it was like, why are these games $60? Like, I don't understand. And back then, I don't think it really made too much sense either. Because while gaming was getting better, I don't think it was getting better to the fact that, oh, we need to have this astronomical amount of money. And kind of looking at the result of that, it doesn't feel like the extra $10 was really make helping them make any other better decisions.
Yeah.
Um, but I think one of the things that I do see this kind of more result of is trapping people into physical stuff or trapping people to like digital
Digital
stuff,
stuff.
um like the digital consoles. Paying a lot for those or
That's
paying
true.
um $100 less for like the digital only thing, and then
You're
those
you're paying
things
$100 less for not a Blu-ray disc, which isn't $100 item.
yeah, which is I
Yeah.
mean not the one that like is really gonna make bank, like, and maybe this is because I've been looking at more home theater stuff and I didn't really realize the differences of a lot of the different Blu-ray players because you could buy Blu-ray players
Oh
well
yeah.
over $1,000. And it's like trying to get someone to understand why you could still buy a Blu-ray player for $1,000. That seems kind of weird because it's like, well, I could just go to Walmart right now and buy it for $50 to $99.
Yeah.
Like even for me, like I didn't really realize, what that was until it's like, oh, I'm looking at why people buying this $500 one particular, and then I didn't realize, oh, it's because it could do Dolby Vision, it could do HDR 10 plus, it could do Dolby Atmos, it could do like da 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 da. Like there's a lot of stuff, and then oh, it can
Right.
actually read the Blu-ray disc this way, and it's like, oh, I didn't really know that was such a big thing, and I'm like, well, maybe that's why it's $100 difference for Sony, and I don't think that's the case because they're not providing those same kind of credentials and stuff. Like I still think you can't. I think you could do Dolby Vision on some of the stuff for PlayStation, but I think like a lot of the movies and stuff, you don't have like those higher visual aspects that movies are now
Depending which
taking
ones,
advantage of.
because you can do it and stuff like that enough. It just depends on this point. It's on the software side of the app that you're using on the store. Like I know Xbox has a lot of them and stuff like that. Like since I have my LG TV and stuff like that, I get like the Dolby Vision pops up
Xbox
because
can though.
yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like but it's also on the software side of it because your Xbox can provide the option to use it, but if your app doesn't allow you to do it, like for Netflix, for example, you got to pay extra to be able to get like Dolby Vision and Dolby Atmos and stuff like that to work on their
Yeah,
products.
correct. But even then, like if you were to buy the digital disc, that's also something different. Like the console itself has to be able to have the ability to do Dolby Vision. Like no matter what
Sony
you pay on
Sony can't do it.
Netflix, not for everything. And that's
Mm,
like if you actually go back and I got to go look at it, it's either Dolby Vision or something else that it can't do, but it can't do it digitally. I think I know Xbox can do it, but I think there's a particular way that they do it that's not the same way as the Blu-ray disc do it.
I
I
know you
think
got to.
there's a coding thing.
Yeah, I know for sure there's a one-time fee for Xbox. You pay like the one-time fee, and you have that license forever until they
I
decide to
gotta go
shut it
look
off.
at that.
Yeah, I know
Yeah,
that
I
because
gotta
I
go
bought
look
it for
at that,
myself
but
and I bought it for my son when I got him his Series X. So I was like, oh, it's $20 and you just have it forever. That's fine. Like that still doesn't hurt me at the moment. You know what I mean?
yeah. But you'll notice that the Blu-ray versions, like the actual disc versions, are entirely different than the digital ones.
Oh yeah,
Like even if you
you'll never
could
get
get
it.
like the highest internet, yeah, like they're not gonna match the quality.
Yeah,
Um,
that probably goes to the videos having to be condensed to be go through the system to pop onto your TV and all that stuff. Like when you
mhm.
actually have the physical disc of a movie, it's always your HDR is going to be way better and all that stuff. Yeah,
Yeah. But it's one of those things where if it said that it can do it, you're still expecting it kind of thing. Like that, I
right.
think that's the kind of thing. It's like if you have the internet and stuff like that, you full on expect that version of whatever movie you're watching kind of comes through, especially when it comes to games. You're expecting like
Hmm.
digital or not, like the game is playing at its utmost quality. And I think sometimes some people kind of just get away from not doing that full thing is, and I think it's because when it comes to console gaming, the quality of there has a cap, and I think it's just everything stays around that cap, and no one really can tell. And I mean that's more of a personal thing, and that's not really me kind of like saying that whether that's true or not. But I just
Yeah,
feel like it's really harder to get when we're not all used to doing anything over 4K 120 hertz, or not a lot of people can do 4K 120 hertz.
right.
Even for me, like I can do it, but it's I may see a difference in stuff. I think it's probably more LG's fault. I think that the color science is just not as good as Sony's TVs, but it's the fact that I can do and I can see some difference for some particular games and stuff. But you just from the grand most of it, you can't see it. And really, movies you it's a little bit easier for movies because color science is really everything. It's how well you can
Yeah.
see the movie. But that was a tangent that I didn't, well, I didn't want to get on because I like home theater. But what I was saying, we got jumped a lot. So for me, the reason why I kind of wanted to go over this today was I just think it's interesting. Like I said, like this is a big thing. I think it's if this was against Nintendo, then I would probably make sense of it. But I do see people in support of this. Like I've seen people on YouTube, they made their videos. They feel like it's a long shot, but they hope Sony loses this. And I guess this is kind of where I say like I'm the opposite. I don't think what Sony is doing, is entirely out of culture. Like I don't think that they're
Hmm.
really kind of like all of a sudden they're charging $90 for games. Like if you're telling me like, oh, the console itself was more expensive in different countries, my argument against that would be, of course it is, because it has to be imported and those imports cost money. Unfortunately, they don't make the PlayStation 5 in Brazil. So when you send a PlayStation 5 in Brazil, Brazil has particular import tax, then all that. And normally that's kind of why you see a lot of these gaming services pop up is
Yeah.
because it's starting to be more expensive to do physical stuff like that. And it's not fair to the consumer in that case because it's not the consumer's fault that this physical thing costs now another $100, another $80. I mean, even another $50 seems unfair to put on the consumer. But it's also not something that I can go to Sony and be like, "Hey, Sony, you need to knock your PlayStation 4 for $400 or 350, so that way I still end up getting this and not this." Because it's like, no, we already know they're taking a loss on the consoles in some way or form. They're not
Right.
making a ton on the consoles. It is the games. that they're making the money on. And I think this is kind of where like I kind of disagree with kind of like this claim. It's like, okay, I see what you're doing it. I see that you're trying to hit on this. I just don't see strong enough proof that this is something that, is really warranted and really fair to Sony in this case.
Yeah, I agree with you because like what Sony's doing on their storefront and stuff, it's not very much different than what all the other stores are doing. And trying to pick them out and just in the sense for this is like to me it really seems like a far reach and not a good reach. Like when it was like a similar situation when it was like Epic versus Apple and stuff like that. Like you had two big head honchos kind of going against each other and stuff like that. And in this sense, you don't have that. And even then, Epic still didn't really win it overall from that aspect and stuff like that. You know what I mean? They had their issues and stuff like that. Apple had its rights, and then going back here to Sony and saying this act, it's I don't see how you're gonna state all these claims, but try to put it on saying it's Sony's fault when, especially when most of their games to this point have been single player games that don't work that don't require you to constantly keep buying things over and over and over again. You know what I mean? Like it's
Gotcha.
not constantly going, oh, you know what, The Last of Us 2 came out. Now we want you to have Ellie dressed in all these different clothes and you gotta go and buy them so you can have her look different or have Joel look all like this. You know what I mean? Like it's like, no, this is The
Hmm.
Last of Us 2, that's pretty much it. They were supposed to do a multiplayer, it hasn't come out yet, so like putting that last name in the bottom of it, like it says, especially including children, is like that's not Sony's fault. That's Epic with Fortnite. That's PUBG. That's
That's
EA. That's Ubisoft. That's even Microsoft.
that I
Microsoft has
that
games like that. You know what I mean?
I mean, that's just comes down to what gaming has become.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, that I think that's just a thing that's like gaming has become the fact that, unfortunately, we really like those games. Like I said, I say it almost every podcast. I'm playing Epic 7, and right now we're in the middle of the Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood collab, and it's like, yeah,
Ooh,
if you don't
that's
have
nice.
enough, like, yeah, if you don't have enough on things to get Elber Elric and the other two characters, you're gonna pay some money.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm also not paying to play the game still. Like a lot of the stuff, like I didn't pay anything this time to get Elric because before this I saved up and was able to do it.
Yeah.
But if I need to, throw down some stat cash because they got the special pack that when anytime they do this, they always have a special pack that's like you could do this and get all this summoning stuff for $50, or you could do this, get all this summoning stuff for $100. Like I'm still not buying a copy of the game. It's just like, oh, you're just buying this digital content
Yeah.
because you may be able to get cool shit with it. That's kind of what it comes down to. I think
Yeah.
that's probably the only thing I don't really agree with. But again, I'm going to blame Epi 7 or Smilegate or whatever the company behind that is because they felt the need to charge me $100 for
Right.
not guaranteed stuff. But they're trying to
And
also make money for a game that's global.
even then, like if you look at the gaming industry right now, just a $60 box content is very very rare where you're gonna make a good money off of it. A lot of these developers are either gonna break even or just make enough to survive, and then hopefully they can last for their next game. They're not getting that extra profit to where they could be funded for their next game already. The only way that happens is if
Hmm.
it's a hit. You know what I mean? And when it has a hit,
Yeah.
like the problem I have a lot with like reviews in the gaming industry, like journalists and stuff like that, is a sense that like unless it's like a 9 out of 10, that it's a bad game. Like it always tends to have that aspect when I watch reviews stuff like that. They're like, oh, it's a 7 out of 10. This is good and this, but this is bad and this is bad and this is bad. And it's like, okay, so did people see those reviews stuff like that? And then those games barely make enough money to survive for the next project, hopefully, and stuff like that. And that's why you see all these developers and companies getting bought out by bigger companies because they're like, we need a mom and dad to support us so we can do our thing because of how our industry is right now, in a sense. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we need to be funded in some way aspect. And I mean, truth be told, I think indie developers kind of utilize a lot of that same press in order to kind of get their game out in front of people. Because one
Yeah,
thing I've noticed from a lot of the indie developers, or like people who have successfully put out a game, like whether it's once or twice, they've always tell you that you have to do the marketing at the same time. Like you got to
yeah,
show people, you got to like keep the interest. You're like you got to build a hype up for it, in order for
Yeah.
people to actually play it. And sometimes they'll utilize a lot of these journalism to be like, hey, I just need you to write about it. Because a lot of times it's like there's no such thing as bad press. If someone says
Right.
something is bad, someone's going to be willing to check how bad it is. And I think that's kind of where like that kind of comes from. But like I tend to agree with you. I do feel that, and it's kind of like why I highlighted this next point. The move for games sold as physical discs to games sold digitally has seen the introduction of in-game content. Blah blah blah. Like, I think there's only one game that I know that had you pay to like actually beat the game, and that was Ashura's Wrath, because like the ending of the game wasn't like in the actual disc itself. You actually had to buy the digital stuff, and like to me that's pretty disrespectful, like in
Yeah.
that case. And I think
That's a little
everything
dirty.
else, yeah, and I think everything else is more of like, well, you know what, in some cases, like, would you say Final Fantasy VII remake is that same kind of shittiness for releasing Final Fantasy VII in parts?
No, because you're trying to make a PlayStation 1 open world game into a modern day game, which is
Yeah,
really hard to do, you know what I mean? So I understand why they're splitting
and
it up.
you kind of understand when you actually play the game, you realize like, oh, they want to make this a way bigger thing,
Yeah.
so they're cutting up the game to be the very important sections of the original game, and those parts themselves were 60 hours. Like
Yeah.
that, they weren't so much in the original game, so you're getting a lot of content out of it. But like that's another example of like, oh, I'm not going to say like that was bad for people, because people end up enjoying that more and being able to enjoy like knowing the
Yeah.
characters and doing stuff more in those aspects. That's not the same as Azure's Wrath, where you can't beat the game. So when they say stuff like, where players must now also pay to progress, unlock more features and stuff, some of that is true, but not all of it, to where the point is digital games are the only way to like play anything more. Like, it's just there.
Yeah.
If you have to pay to have something kind of go further and stuff, it's more like an extra story thing that you wouldn't have gotten if we were still in like PS2 era, right? Like, if you got the game, there was no DLC, there was nothing
Right.
that you can utilize to kind of continue your gameplay, and there wasn't anything where it's like, well, we're gonna not let you play the game unless you buy these two games for $50 each. Like that's just not a thing, and I don't think digital games have really introduced that. I do see, if you want to have more funny stuff added to your game, by all means, but like, I some of this I don't agree with. Some of it I can see where they're kind of going for it. Um, I do think
I
like, yeah, customizing their experience and stuff. I would kind of agree, but even the new Saints Row game has a customization at the very beginning. Elden
yeah.
Ring has customization. Elden Ring was another thing. I think another hit against this is, I think in some um it's in some versions it's actually cheaper on this digital copy,
Is it
and I
really?
think it's because it's not a Sony backed project.
Yeah.
I think FromSoft is pretty independent, and I think a lot of the independent ones don't really have to have a lot of the extra additional stuff added on top of it, although they don't get a lot of Sony support the same way.
Hmm.
But I mean, there are some that, like, because they're not having to do a lot of other stuff, they don't mind pricing down their games, and I think they will see that even in the UK, where some of those games are cheaper. Like, it really depends on the game.
Yeah. It's really interesting how they're doing it. I do see the idea of like Sony having like a near monopoly and stuff like that, because you like the only upside of this would be Nintendo, but the like everything else you can buy these games from different stores and stuff like that in different fronts. And Sony's looks like they're starting to head that way with like putting a lot more stuff on PC and everything. To the fact that
Hmm.
they're making monitors, they just had that new announcement and stuff like that, about being more like PC, being more into PC and stuff like that. Like, so they're on the right track, and I think that's just going to help benefit them more when it comes to this lawsuit once it actually goes into effect in court. Because when they try and bring that up, they'll be like, no, It's like, maybe we were like that and stuff like that, but we've already done this and that. Like, we already have building blocks to where you're going to be able to access our first party games through other sources, even if they're not it day and day and stuff like that. I mean, that's up to them. It's their product. They don't have to release them day and day. You know what I mean? Their job is to
Hmm.
sell consoles and stuff like that, and then the games as well. And the way they want to sell those consoles is by having premium products for those consoles, so people go and buy them.
Yeah, in the middle of that, I kind of realized Sony's also like a Japanese company still. Like they're still
Yeah.
inherently more of a Japanese company. So a lot of this seems like it's per part. Like if you're like a lot of this seems to be more protection of brand and everything.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it also comes down to like I see what they're going for it, and I know Sony's been pretty much global for like as much as I've known them for, with Sony Entertainment of America and like
Yeah.
a lot of the other branches and stuff. But it just seems like a lot of this stuff is just like, why is it only in the UK that people feel strongly about this? And that I think that's a weak question, honestly, because it's like, well, just because it's not happening in the United States doesn't mean it's or not, that I don't feel like it's happening in the United States doesn't mean it's not a problem. But like, what I think is it really that bad in the UK where the prices
Right.
for games are a lot more expensive? And I probably after this, I might even go look at it some more just to kind of see like some examples. I know some people they try to show that. I try to watch some other videos and try to get what other people's feeling was about it. And some people did say like, "Oh yeah, it's more expensive for the digital copy," blah blah blah. But they never really show like the what the physical copy price was. Like if it was
Right.
$70 online, if it's £70 online, it's a £70 in the store. Like
Right.
I didn't see that kind of comparison, so I might actually do some more on that personally. But I think the way that I still see this, even kind of us really talking right now, I don't really see this. I don't really see this thing going anywhere. Like I'll be so very surprised if
Mhm.
they do win this case. But if they ever do kind of go head into it, I would love to see the details and the proof behind it,
Me
because I
too.
think that's what's really going to change my mind is seeing the proof of this. It's like seeing like, oh yeah, Sony is doing like this, and like here's a contract for an example of this Sony just kind of grabbing both cheeks and like taking it. But it's like I think this is like one of those things where like right here we believe that customers are paying too much. Is like your English teacher would smack you for that. If you wrote that in your project, it's like, what do you mean you believe? It's all
Yeah.
like, wasn't all of this supposed to be like, hey, like, aren't you for sure? You're taking $6 billion from me. Like, you should do more than disbelieve. You say you should
Yeah.
know for a fact. Like, like we're about like you come at me like this, you should be bring a lot more stuff up the light and be like, hey, like we got this on you. We're seeing this, and that's pretty messed up, Sony. Like I don't think people appreciate that. You deserve to be treated better. Like the big customer deserve to be treated better. Like this ain't fair. This ain't funny, Sony. And it's like, oh,
What I can't
it's
see
probably
happening
why it's
from
the first
this,
of its kind.
what I can't see happening from this is kind of what happened in Europe as well when it came to like the whole loot box craze and stuff like that.
Hmm.
Was there was like lawsuits filed in action against like EA and stuff like that for like the way their FIFA loot boxes were and stuff like that. And they didn't win the cases in a sense, but EA did change their formats in those countries to how loot boxes were presented, what the percentage was of getting like a top item and stuff like that changed to so you get a higher better percentage and stuff like that. So, so
Hmm.
it did help and alleviate that way to like they didn't win the case, but it did make change for the company to be better for the consumers in those regions. And so if Sony is charging a lot more for their digital products than they are in physical products, then if this case goes somewhere, they may not win the case, but they might end up going, hey, you know what, Sony? You need to cut your shit out and make it sure it's the same price as the other as it is in store and stuff like that, or very close to it in a sense. And then after that point, you know what I mean, they don't win a case, but at least their games are going to be costing more. But that is something that I got to research myself and see if that's actually true.
Yeah, and I think right now we're talking, even with as much as I saw, this is kind of like still like first impressions, kind of really discussing it
Hmm.
with somebody else because, like, I think what really kind of got me was a lot of people like I hope they win this, and I hope Sony takes this L. And $6 million to take from a company is a pretty big L, no matter who you are. And I
Yeah.
just don't think, like, if this isn't really warranted, I don't think it's something that really needs to go through. Because this probably could do a lot more damage to the brand itself. You know, like I'm more willing for people to pay for their mistakes. I'm not more willing to just because they can afford it, we should hit them when we can, kind of
Right.
thing. Because just to me, I just don't feel like it has enough legs to stand. Like it doesn't have enough leg strength. And I think
Yeah.
when you kind of like push this around, I do wish, um, yeah, like stuff like this. I don't think they're fair. I bet best way to say it. I think there just needs to be more in it, for something like this to kind of really kind of go into it. Like I get it, you know, you want to, you know, get back at them and all that, but it's like if they're not really doing anything terribly wrong, or they're not really doing anything different than what they have been doing,
Right.
um and I still personally feel they are not the worst at this to this day. I really don't feel that way, that Sony is being more unfair than other people who have even a tighter grip on what
Yeah.
they sell. uh I guess I really can't support it. Like I don't really feel like Sony should really be taking this L. Not as much as I seen like everybody else do it. Even for people who are like really talking about it, but still feel like, yeah, but I hope they still lose. And it's like, if you don't really feel like what they're doing is wrong, and we can all kind of just talk about, hey, yeah, this kind of seems kind of weird, and it doesn't seem like that's really like Sony's fault. Um, why would you still want them to take an L for it? And that's
Yeah.
kind of where I'm at.
You wanna if this is really the issue, then you need to hit the people that are actually causing the big issue of this. The only thing I can see in this lawsuit against Sony is the fact of the idea of the monopolization for buying their own games. But like I said before, even then they're already starting to bring them out to PC and stuff like that. I mean, even to the point where you have Death Stranding appearing on Game Pass PC. Like that's a huge thing for both companies to work together because Sony owns the IP for Death Stranding and stuff like that. So they had to talk that out, work it together, and be like, you know what? All right, yeah, we'll allow this game to go on there and stuff like that because it's going to be branded under Microsoft's thing for this and that. But it's Sony's IP, you know what I mean? So like they're making changes to get access to their games in different ways, and they know it because they're going to get a lot of money that way. You know what I mean? PC sells a lot of games,
Yeah,
and PC is really good about even if it's an old game, you could a year or 2 years later, you can resell it on Steam or on the Epic Store, and you will make another maybe 1 million to 2 million copies sold that way.
yeah. And I think that probably goes on to my next question. Do you feel that what Sony is doing with the whole like monopoly of them only selling games for their console, how bad do you feel like how bad do you feel on that, or how, I guess not how bad, how strongly do you feel about that?
I personally don't have a problem with it because when it comes to having a product and wanting people to get your product, you need to have some type of incentive as to why I'm buying their product. And the reason why Sony during the PlayStation 4 era was such a dominant force was because they had those amazing, awesome first title games. You know what I mean? It's like, I want to play
Mhm.
The Last of Us. So how am I going to play that? I'm going to have to buy a Sony product. But I don't see how there's anything wrong with that because they funded the company. They funded the developers. They own it. They own the IP. And they're trying to sell a box that they want someone to buy. So here, you want this box? Sure, you can play all these other games, stuff like that on it too, and you can also play all those games over here. But you can't play that game on that box or on that PC or vice versa or this and that. You only do it here. Like that's that's just kind of how products work when you're trying to buy stuff. I like buying rice over generic brand because rice has a better taste because of the A, B, and C. You know what I mean? It's just little
Hmm.
things like that. This is the same thing. It's just because it's an entertainment thing and stuff like that. They try to act different. I mean, when it comes to movie theaters, I like going to the Alamo Draft House because of the experience they give me and stuff like that. Sure, I could watch this movie at a Carmike or IMAX stuff like that, but I like going to the Alamo because I'll have a 90% less chance of a crying baby or people talking during the movie and stuff like that. You know what I mean?
Right.
I'm paying for the experience of product that they're offering to go to that establishment and stuff and spend my money there. I see this as the same thing.
I think the only thing I'll probably hit on you in your analogy would be like, at least in the Alamo Draft House, you have the possibility of seeing like the same movie everybody else is seeing. Not so much with Alamo Draft House because they like to play the oldie stuff a lot, but I think the crevice of that is like if you wanted to watch any of the Marvel movies and Alamo Draft House just couldn't show you them because of some block,
Right.
you'd be kind of like that's kind of messed up. I think Galaxy Theater here that we have over here is backed by Sony. I'm not sure if it's backed by Sony, but it's heavily Sony product in there, like from the projector to the Atmos to like the type of screening and all that. You know, it'd be weird if a movie theater like that was only showing like Sony movies, but someone
Right.
else couldn't show it, or like Lionsgate or whatever had a contract with Sony and they had to put it only in theaters that had their projector. If they didn't have their projector, they couldn't show it. And I think that's kind of what they're more closely hitting at, right? Is just the fact that like, yeah, we have a lot of movie theaters, but you can only do it if they actually have our projector to show it, or else it's not going to work in any other. It's not going to work on a Christie projector. It's not going to work on S-Pen projector. It's like it has to be a Sony commercial projector. And I think that's kind of what they're saying. It's like, hey, they have a monopoly on it's only going to funnel one way, no matter where you put it. It's only going to funnel one way.
Yeah.
So,
But at the same time, if it was a Sony's Pictures movie that Sony was fully funding and Sony fully owned the IP for that movie,
mm,
then they do have the right to, if they wanted to only be on Sony projections, they have that. They can do that because they're not gonna make money off of it. You know what I mean? But I mean, they do have the right to do that, being like, hey, like I own the OP, I funded all the money for this product to be made, all this stuff, and to see it best, it's going to be on this type of projector. So that's how we want it to be watched. You know what I mean? It.
mm-hmm.
I mean, they could do that, and so when it comes to the games, that's what they're doing. This is our game. This is what we're doing. This is how we're getting to go into this product. And I know with movies they don't do that because for the most part, Sony projectors are not going to be the best projectors out of another projector at another movie theater, stuff like that. And the movie industry is a lot different in a sense, but like,
Yeah.
I mean, you're going after Sony for this, but Nintendo's doing the same thing on the other side, and they get to just still be Nintendo. It's like, oh, Nintendo be Nintendoing, but that's okay because that's Nintendo. But oh no, it's Sony, and Sony's the bad guy. It's like, well, they're not really the bad guy.
Yeah, and I think that's kind of what we ultimately come down to is just the
Yeah,
fact that I don't outside of it, it's just not really having legs to stand on. It's I don't think they're doing anything that's egregiously bad. I don't think nobody wins from from the lawsuit as much. Like the compensation, because for the type of lawsuit that it is, like you might get like 30-40 bucks back. That's not
yeah,
gonna give you back money for all the digital stuff that you did. And is it gonna teach Sony the lesson that they need? That's kind of hard because companies have a way of being like, we'll pay money but we're not saying anything, like
yeah,
it's there's a way for they have a way to kind of get out on their own. So whether or not this helps, you know I just hope that kind of as more stuff going on and I get to see the conversation around this get bigger, that I hope that I can be convinced that this lawsuit, this claim has the right to kind of stand and that we get
right,
more out of it. Because one thing that I do hope is to get more knowledge and get more information about something that I didn't know, that I wasn't aware of it because I just looked at the world like, okay, everything's fine. I don't see anything wrong here. Sometimes you do appreciate when stuff comes from underneath the ground and you're like, oh, okay, I have this information now. What do I do with it?
Right.
So we're hoping that if anything that comes out of this is that we kind of get like that John Oliver effect is like, hey, like we're now been told a lot of stuff, and now it's like, okay, so what do we do about it now? Now we have this
Right.
information in hand, versus when we didn't have it before. It's like, oh, okay, maybe the lawsuit didn't win, but it exposed a lot of stuff that's happening right now, and now we're all aware of it.
Right.
So I'm hoping at least it goes that route.
Yeah, I'm hoping for the like, if it is the fact that they're charging more digitally than physical, that this lawsuit would just help bring the prices back down to be regularly competitive instead of egregious as like it's kind of claiming as it is. I mean, at least you
Pretty
get that
much.
out of it. But like, okay, cool. Hey, it's like this game is $90, 90 pounds, stuff like that, but now it's back to 70 pounds. As if I could buy it in the store. It's like, okay, cool. Like that was something that good came out of this.
Yeah. I do hope there are some changes. I just really feel like this is a pretty big back to swing. All right, so that's what I kind of wanted to talk about it with you for today. I think this was pretty interesting. It's kind of one of I think this was kind of one of those topics where I felt like I think it was kind of big enough to kind of push what we were going to be talking about to kind of really
Yeah,
just hit on this. I think, and we'll do later on in the different shows and podcasts. I think we'll also just be like, hey, yeah, we will probably talk about some more pressing things that are happening right now and stuff. Because I do feel like this kind of leads into a bigger conversation with this digital in its entirely, because that's
yeah.
I still have some other stuff we didn't really get to talk about here and stuff, but that kind of goes on
Digital
to
itself, it could be its own
a different kind
conversation.
of land. Yeah, it comes into a
Yeah,
different land of conversation. But I think for this one, I think what's happening right now. Kind of already said my thoughts. You said your thoughts. Anything else you kind of want to say to kind of take us out?
I mean, if anyone out there has any other information to change our idea otherwise with like good backing and stuff like that, good resources, send it our way. Uh, DM us, stuff like that, comment and everything on the video and stuff like that. That way it helps us to look at different articles and stuff like that we're not getting through our feeds and stuff like that, because that happens with the algorithms and stuff like that. So by all means, share in the right way, not in the trolling way, because that's not going to
Yeah,
get you
like
anything.
yeah. To be clear about that, I don't mind if I'm wrong. Right? Really,
Yeah,
I really
exactly.
don't. Like if you say something that I may debate you on it. Probably, maybe not. It just really depends on what's being said. But I don't mind being wrong. Like this is one of those things where like I don't mind being grievously wrong. Would be like, oh no, you don't understand. Look at this. Look at these prices. Da da da. Like and look at the give me a graph. I like graphs. Graphs tell a lot of different stories.
Yeah,
It's fine. I don't mind being that, and I do encourage y'all, if y'all are on YouTube watching this, go ahead and leave a comment and stuff. And like Chris said, it send us a message, kind of send us some more information. We do want to learn more about this kind of stuff, but for now, I think we're just talking about just kind of how we see the situation and kind of see the angle that is trying to come at. And we just don't right now just feel that is really all that strong.
yep.
So with that, I think we'll go ahead and wrap up today's episode. Thank you everybody for watching, enjoying, and if you have anything else that's on the top of your mind, don't forget to put it in the comments down below. This is DuShaun Williams. This is my co-host Chris
Chris,
Hada. I don't know. Hopefully, I'm still saying that right, man. I know. I say it right in my head. I know the lips sometimes kind of be like, blah, blah,
you do better than
blah.
most.
Thank you. I appreciate that. With that being said, everybody, thank you for watching us today, and we'll see you next time.